So, right, boys and girls, we are back another week later. Another game, another defeat, another depressing time to be an Arsenal fan. Apparently, we can't have things easy in life for Arsenal. We have owners that don't know what they're doing of apparently, and just half-half doing things left, right, and centre, making no sense of what they're doing. And yeah, we lost tonight. Lost last night, 3-0 to a bang average, in my opinion, Man City at the moment. They're not the best, not the most informed team at the moment. We got shown up by them, considering a week ago they lost a derby against United, who again I don't rate. But yeah, it is what it is. I'm joined today by Max from Arsebros, Arsenal Blow Run. How you doing? Podcast. How you
Good,
doing?
mate. How are you? Yep. Mate, just reveling in the amazingness that is Arsenal at the moment.
Yeah,
Another fantastic, positive podcast coming out to people, no doubt.
Oh yeah, as always. Yeah, but apparently, according to some parts of the media in the UK, we have to be positive no matter what. Because if we're negative, we're being toxic and we're making the situation worse. Apparently, can do one.
Yeah.
Oh my days! What we meant to do? Fucking sing and dance? What we? Yeah, we're in the relegation battle. Woohoo! Fuck yeah! We're close to the relegation. We're close to the relegation in the top four. Yes! We're coming. We're literally turning into Newcastle. Let's not say nothing. We could be in the new leagues, but no. We've got to be positive. It does my head in how media treat us fans and how they see us as scum of the earth. They know nothing. We have training. We have experience. Fuck them. Let's just get into the match yesterday first. Off, we're going to the breaking news that is today. What was your thoughts yesterday in the game in general? We 30 seconds, great, and then we just bent over and then, okay, you have to.
I didn't have the same emotional response to it as what a lot of people did. A lot of people's emotional response to it was to go after the big target, the easy target, which was the effort again, and people saying there wasn't any running and there wasn't this and there wasn't that. Mate, I didn't see that much. I just saw a golf in quality, a golf in power, a golf in running. And really, if you're going to concede after 90 seconds, when there's that much scar tissue around this team already, it's like battered fucking wife syndrome at the moment, mate. We've been hit that many times that we just, we lie down at the moment, and that's what happens when you concede after 90 seconds. Measured in a very Mesut Ozil way, and there's nothing new there, is there? And I mean, looking at lineups and stuff like that, I mean, we put out what I basically expect us to put out. I would like to have seen a third man in midfield instead of the unflushed floating turd that is Mesut Ozil, popping around to make 3 nice passes per game and to have all the Ozil lovers sit there and go, oh, look at those 3 nice passes while he did fuck all. I mean, even at one point he sat down on the floor. I think someone made a challenge on him. He sat down on the floor and he couldn't be fucked getting up. But it's okay because he'll walk to the sideline, crack the shits and throw his gloves. But other than that, mate, it was much of the muchness. I thought it was a free hit. I thought we got done by superior players, in particular De Bruyne, who for a fucking cunt who looks like such a pussy, like, man, he's got some big balls, huh? Like just to run on a ball like that and smash one, he looks like such a fucking pussy. But fuck, another day as an Arsenal fan. And then today we get to wake up to the wonderful news that our grandstanding appointment, our new big man who's going to take us to the future is most likely going to be the one and only Mikel Arteta.
Yay.
Yay. It is a bit like that, isn't it? It is a bit like, yay. Like on one hand, it's new manager, which obviously we need, because I think Freddie, who's been very, very smart in the media, in always letting us know that he's an interim and always letting us know that he doesn't have the support staff, kind of without being shitty about it. He's just let us know in every press conference that this is an interim period and we're working towards getting the next guy. So on one hand, there's an element of relief that the board has made a decision, but I'm sure, as we're going to talk about later, once again, they've gone about it in the most backwards, roundabout way that they possibly could.
But do you think, saying to sticking on it, do you think them being so open, even with the players, that's backfired on Freddie and these interim time because it's pretty much like, and I've been at the games, especially yesterday. It was like even playing out from the back. It's even though Emery's not there, we're playing the same tactics, and the players again can't. We can't be asked to be here sort of attitude. I don't know.
I think that's a timing. I think that's a timing issue as well. I mean, think about it. You and I were talking before the show about how big businesses and big corporations in general act in a way that always affects their business in the best possible manner. So if you were making strategic decisions about when to or when not to bring in an interim manager, you'd be looking at two things. You'd be looking at, number one, being relatively set on who was coming in before you made the decision, especially considering you delayed the decision by, in most people's opinions, 5 to 6 weeks. Probably after the Palace game, a lot of us would have been saying, pull the pin. So to start with, we've got a failure there where they were unprepared. Then they bring in Freddie as an interim, but they don't give him the backroom staff to be able to do it because they're obviously worried about whatever it might be, right? The second part of that is then timing. If you were going to bring in an interim manager, at what point does it sound like a good idea to tear up the playbook when you're entering December and you're playing a game every 3 days? And so the training doesn't have time and the squad doesn't have an established pattern play to it. So the deck was stacked for Freddie long before he started. This was never going to be a new manager bounce. And everyone spoke about this idea of this new manager bounce. There is no new manager bounce when the team is busted and then the decision is too late and then the support staff aren't there and then you're going into a period of time which is the busiest schedule of the year. And all he can basically do is walk around, tap everyone on the nuts and say, you're a good player, you're a good boy, I believe in you. Now, I think that might work with a different type of player. But I think if you look at the systemic issues across our team, there's an inability for those people to motivate themselves and get themselves up. And they're a little bit busted and a little bit bruised at the moment. And like I said, the lack of energy. I was having an argument with Manny Riz, who's on my podcast on the Arsebros Rankcast, and he had this very, very emotional response to it that they're not making the effort. They're not making the effort. And I said to him, they're not FIFA players. They don't just have ratings. You don't just hit reset and go to the next game and they're all of a sudden just going to start playing to their rating. Oh, he's an 85, he's a 76, he's a 68. These are a lot of them young men who are emotionally trying to deal with the fact that they are the worst Arsenal team since the 70s. Mm-hmm. They're on the worst run. They're not being led properly. Their captain acted like a fuckwit and walked off and threw his hands up and then blew up in the media. Their coach and their board have let them down. And a lot of these players never should have seen the quantity of game time that they've seen. Matteo Guendouzi never should have seen this quantity of game time. I would even argue that Martinelli never should have seen this quantity of game time. Willock shouldn't have seen this quantity of game time. This is a systemic issue in recruitment where we decided, or the board decided at some point, to go after Project Youth and remove all of these assets from the team who, even though they were underperforming, were at least mature assets capable of producing and who had an understanding of what it is to play at the top level. None of these guys know what it is to play at the top level. And so they're struggling emotionally and they're struggling to be able to deal with the fact that they are essentially the biggest failure in Arsenal history at this stage, or at least in modern history, in modern times. So big ramble, but I just think that there's small targets and there's big targets, and everyone goes after the big targets because they're easy to see. But it's a lot of the peripheral stuff around the club at the moment that is just a fucking mess.
Yeah, I've just got a question in the chat from Tony Turner. He's basically asking, do you think Freddie will remain at the club after Arteta is appointed, or do you think they'll move on with how he's been set
up? I think that Freddie will remain in the club. I think it's likely that at the bare minimum, he'll move into either the under-21s. And I think Steve Bold's the under-23s coach at the moment. They did a swap. So maybe Freddie will move back into the under-21s. Or hopefully, I guess the ideal situation is Arteta's not coming with a backroom staff as he's an assistant. He's not a head coach, which means he will have to assemble his backroom staff. And you would hope that in one way or another, Arsenal would reward Freddie for taking this bullet with giving him an assurance that taking this interim manager role was not going to be the end of his time at Arsenal. So I'd like to think that Arteta would be able to find a seat on the bench for Freddie.
Well, just sticking that slight last point you made, that you'd think the club itself and the owners wouldn't be that stupid knowing what Freddie is to the fan base. But again, as you said, the way they've gone about things, you never know with Arsenal, especially the Cronkies. To say one thing and do the complete opposite. I mean,
logic doesn't make sense for these guys, does it?
No. And Josh said back in the summer, be excited. How can this make us excited? What would have united the fan base in one? Is it going for a manager, a head coach, however you want to address it, that has that experience of not only the league, but in football in general, be it Ancelotti, Poch, whoever, someone who's got experience. This is, as I've touched on, we are in a situation where we cannot. This is a huge risk on all sides, but we can't afford that risk. Why have we got? As I said earlier, why have we got to be the guinea pig to Arteta's managerial career? I think Everton, the club that made him, pretty much before he came to us, didn't even want him. They've gone for the experience. Doesn't that speak volumes?
Yeah, look, I think there's an element of if this appointment was going to be the correct appointment, it was immediately after Arsene Wenger, because it was a free roll of the dice. The first manager after a manager for 21 years, no one's expecting a huge amount. You're looking at a journeyman. He could have come in, absorbed what was left over from Wenger and maybe had a go. But we decided to go with the one and only Unai. And you know what? When it comes to Unai, I put a tweet up after the Man City game to kind of bring it back to the Man City game. And I said, every game that passes, I start to feel more sympathy towards Unai. And I start to put more weight onto the board, and I start to put more weight onto the recruitment, the disjointed amount of players that we have, the way that none of the players seem to make sense in any cohesive system. We've got counter-attacking players, possession-based players, players who need to sit back, players who need to be on the front foot. None of it makes any sense. No. None of that came down to Unai. And the biggest fear is that Arteta is going to walk into a bee's nest, right, which is Arsenal right now. And, you know, he's going to get stung. He's going to get stung a lot. My thing with the argument with the experienced manager and versus the not experienced manager doesn't actually have anything to do with coaching. And I think that's where people are getting really, really mixed up, because a coach is a coach. You know, a good coach is a good coach, and someone who can motivate. And that doesn't necessarily need a huge quantity of runs on the board or experience. But here's the issue. Our board are fucked, which means when a manager comes in, any manager in any business structure anywhere, you have to manage both directions, 360-degree management, right? You have to manage down, which means your subordinates have to respect you. They have to understand what you're doing. They have to be along for the ride. They have to believe in the message, and they have to want to work hard for it. That's generally the easier part to do, because change essentially affects that. The players are younger. Mikel Arteta is younger, which means you've got a load of millennials who may actually see him as a easier figure to grab onto than, say, a Carlo Ancelotti. But here's the issue. The board are 70 and 80-year-old men. You know, you've got Sir Chips and all these guys, right? And they're essentially the power brokers in the club. They're essentially the ones who are making the decisions, essentially making the calls, you know, Raul and Edu and the likes. So by bringing in a senior manager and a 360-degree management plan, you also have to manage up, which means you have to manage to the people above you. Now, an Ancelotti would have garnered a great deal of respect up. He would have been able to walk in there and he would have been able to say, this is what we need. This is what I want. These are the types of players that I want. This is how we get us out of this trouble. And they would have listened. What I question with Arteta is whether or not he's going to have that level of assertion being new, whether he's going to have that level of respect being quite young, and whether he's actually going to be able to manage the club in its entirety through what may end up being 3 years. So, like, people are talking 3 transfer windows. I'm looking at 5 transfer windows. I mean, if you're looking at 3 transfer windows, fuck January. No one does anything in January. The only thing you get in January are cast-offs and misfits at overpriced money. So, like, if we need 3 transfer windows, we're talking 3 years. Like, is Arteta going to be the guy to guide us through? And I don't want to be one of these hyper-emotional guys and, like, fuck Arteta and fuck the board and fuck this and fuck Arsenal and fuck my club and, like you said, the whole toxic fan thing. But I also don't want to be the inverted commas good fan who's going to sit there and say, great appointment, give him time. I just think it's going to be what it's going to be, mate. And we just have to grin and bear it. It's like your first 2 days in prison. You're probably going to get fucked.
and everything you just said, it's my fear as well. Is that someone like Ancelotti, he'd come in and said, "No, I know what needs to be done to fix this issue." And because of what the pedigree he is, the board would respect what he has to say and do it. Whereas Arteta hasn't got that behind him. And would he do that? What do we know about him as a coach and in general? He's one of 4 number 2s to Pep, and he's like we don't know if he's going to be the sort of coach that wants to be your best friend or the one with a firm hand, and that's where. And because he's so close he's played with some of these players before he retired a few years back. That as well. Is he going to try and put these be best buds off the pitch and this that on a training field?
Well, we don't know, do we? We essentially don't know anything about him. We have no yardstick, And just because someone has worked for someone senior, does not mean that they are the embodiment of that person. Because often in management positions with our subordinate management team, we actually wrap ourselves with different personalities to be able to give us different ideas of what's going on. So we often will not actually go and get someone who's exactly like us. So people are saying, well, if he's worked for Pep, then he's going to be like Pep. Then he's going to think like Pep. That may not be the case. Arteta might be the voice of defensive reason in Pep's ear. He might be the one who says, Pep, let's not put 17 strikers on the pitch. We don't know what we hope. And the reason why we're so fearful, and I think the explanation of why the fan base is so fearful, right, is based around this statement. You would hope that a club like Arsenal had done its due diligence to a degree that they understood what sort of coach Arteta was, that they have done enough throughout the 2 interview processes he's been through now, that they've done enough to understand what he is and what he's going to bring to the club. The reason why we get so petrified is because we have no faith that our club is going to act in a way that makes logical sense. We don't believe that they may have done the right thing.
No, because it's the whole half-ass, so to speak, way they've gone about things. They've never, as we said offline, gone and identified at least 2 or 3 main men. It was always we'll interview. We've got a list. We won't tell you who they are, but we want to get the right man. We're going to do it this way. One interview. We have 4 different interviews before they actually see the main person who gives the casting vote. It comes down to the saying, identify 3 people. Don't say your order, who's your main man. Just identify 3. None of this 10, 11, whatever, 15-man shortlist, and get on with it. And also,
if
you haven't got prepared that, you shouldn't be sacking your manager or head coach.
Exactly. Especially when they sacked him 5 fucking weeks too late. What were you fucking doing for 5 fucking weeks? Exactly. What were you doing? Oh,
exactly.
And this is my thing, right? I said this to you offline. It feels like Arteta was always the guy. It feels like that to me. For them, that Arteta was always the guy. So if Arteta was always the guy, why not make a statement, come out and say, this guy at the moment is our primary role. He just missed out 18 months ago. And the club feels that based on what he did 18 months ago and coming so close to getting the job 18 months ago, that he is the main candidate and we will be pursuing him.
Exactly. But it's just,
do you not think the fan base then would have had a period of time to come to grips with the idea and the concept? Or and we come back to this over and over and over again about the way the club communicates, right? And how poor the club is at communicating. So if you didn't want to come out and say that, then why wouldn't you, now that he's close to appointment, or what I would expect from the club at appointment is a strong backed statement, essentially saying that he's always the guy and this is what he's going to bring, and coming out to the media and coming out to the fans and actually letting us know, actually communicating with us instead of thinking that everything can be done behind closed doors. And who gets fucking caught on camera leaving the guys, like, do you know what I mean? Like, why wouldn't you have this fucking set? Yeah, why wouldn't you have this set up like back of house? Why wouldn't you have this set up in a way where he can go out and do like the whole? So you've just now leaked it to the media. So what now if this doesn't happen for whatever reason, because it's not locked in, the signature's not on the paper. Right, all of a sudden, if it doesn't happen now, it's like, oh yeah, sorry, that was another red herring. Sorry, Mikel, you didn't get it again. It's just a fucking shambles.
Yeah, because now after all that last night, we didn't even approach Man City to talk to him about, by the looks of it. It's like we've done all the talking, and now we're like, oh, Man City, by the way, what are your number 2? Can we have him, please? You approach again. What you've gone about it there is what you approach the club first, make sure it's okay. They're okay with him talking, at least talking to, having a chat, have a meeting. But they haven't done that, and now we're like, as you said, if it backfires and it doesn't happen, then Man City say no, we want to keep him because they might see him as Pep's replacement coming at the end of the season because he's coming in the end of his cycle where he likes to move on.
There is no fucking way that Pep Guardiola gets replaced by an assistant who's never managed for
you don't know
like one.
You don't know what the owners are thinking.
I know, but the whole thing about Arteta replacing Pep to me just reeked of bumping up the remuneration money for Arteta. For like, Man City aren't stupid. We're stupid. Man City aren't fucking stupid, right? They're runners of business. They make money. Like, so I just, I don't know. Wait and see.
We're even looking in the chat, Tony's again saying the final 3 apparently was Arteta, Vieira and Poch. 2 of them you can get on board.
Well, if Poch was an option for us, then we would be fucking stupid to turn him down.
This is what I'm saying. This is so really, this is why certain fans are like, we've gone for the cheap. Have all your options, you've gone for the cheaper option with no experience because he's less money. And that's how it comes across. If that is the case, because it will leak out at some point that was the case, and then the fan base will actually go again. When this, and that's the thing. As you said, who at 1:30 in the morning UK time goes to someone's house, has a meeting, comes at 1:30 in the morning, smug as anything, and then go, we didn't tell no one. How did they know? This is the UK media. They know everything. They tap phones over here, so let's not even go there.
Well, what you hope is it's not a deliberate leak. What you hope is it wasn't like when there was all the talk when Aubameyang got photographed by Gazidis, and there was talk that it was Gazidis that tipped people off so that it could be a deliberate leak. You hope it's not a deliberate leak in the sense that they're sitting there and saying, oh, we haven't signed him yet, but we'd like to see what the fan base's reaction is through a deliberate leak. I'm probably clutching at straws there, but it just seems in the modern day when these guys are so well media trained that the lunacy of actually sort of going to someone's house until 1 a.m. and then getting filmed, getting back in the car is just, it's so fucking Arsenal. Like, how we, like, I don't want to upset all your listeners, but how we always make fun of Spurs for being Spursy?
We did it.
Mate, we're becoming very like, we're becoming Arsenal-y, in our own fucking strange way. Like, I don't know how many more credits we have in the bank to still sit there and say that we're better than a lot of people, because fucking we do not act like it at the moment.
No, even as you just said there before, if this falls through, Man City say no, that you've put it out there that this is your number 1 choice now. So now how can our board and all that and Gronkies come back from this and go to the next person and say, actually no. They just set themselves up for a massive fall. Because as I said,
Yeah.
we're cutting it shorter, but if it does backfire, we're in trouble. Because now anyone else is. Because we look at last time when Wenger left, Vieira was eventually approaching, because how Vieira is, he was of the attitude of, well, because they didn't approach me straight away, I wasn't one of their first choices. Why should I even entertain them? And this could happen again now. And now we're in a catch-22 where we have to sit with Freddie. They're going to be like, okay, Freddie till the end of the season, and then go and start again. And I dread to think, because our players aren't giving the reaction of wanting to be at the club at the moment. We saw Zach 5 weeks ago do what he did. Hasn't really apologised. I don't believe he really apologised. He just justified what he did to the fans that are there because of what the abuse he was getting online. Whereas I don't justify the abuse he got online. That's disgusting. But to then try and justify how you then told the match-going fans, the people that pretty much pay your wage week in, week out, come and watch you home and away, to tell them where to stick it numerous times, then walk off like a petulant child. And basically, I believe I wasn't in the wrong sort of attitude for over a week before we got the statement. And then since then, he hasn't done nothing to redeem himself on the pitch. We saw Mesut Ozil yesterday kick his gloves. If you fucking do that, he's caused it. And then on the match day itself, he's caused aggro anyway for speaking out the way he did over the China situation. And then the club distanced themselves from him and that. We have nothing to. That's his own person, because they're scared of losing bloody TV rights. Whereas in China, the Chinese decided not to show the game in the end. Which apparently could come back and backfire us apparently on by the FA. But the FA were going to do it. They'll punish us anyway for not even turning up to a game. You got Aubameyang that was literally walking up and down the pitch, didn't do nothing yesterday.
Well, he's gone. Well, he's gone, regardless of. Yeah, but well, he wasn't the right captain's choice.
I know that
for me anyway. I mean, Xhaka wasn't the right captaincy choice. So, but I mean, then you go through the entire team and you try and find a group of leaders. I mean, fucking Mesut Ozil's one of your 5 captains. Good, well done, Mesut. Jog on.
Literally.
That's a meme. We need a meme. Jog on, Mesut.
Oh, I think we can sort that out at some point after this. The only person I could really pick out of the squad players we've got that's been a captain before was Lacazette, because he was obviously captain of Lyon. But even then,
yeah, but he's been being a petulant little poisonous bitch for 3 or 4. He's been at the head of the spear as far as Freddie coming in and him just walking around. Mate, it's the thing is you can try and wrap it up in whatever you want. At its core, there's systemic issues within the club, and they are not going to be changed by a coach. Right? The issues are wider reaching. They're from the board down. There's issues in recruitment. There's issues in the way we built the team. There's issues in who we've let go, who we've brought in. There's a major issue in the financial ramification of whoever okayed Project Youth. Right? There's a huge financial ramification there, because to go into a season, I was saying this to my brother yesterday, there would not be another big club in England who by choice would run into a season saying, we are going to have to get 20 games out of 6 different academy-based players, 6 different breakthrough season-based players, right? And that's what's going to end up happening. You're going to end up 20 games out of Willock, Martinelli. I know Guendouzi's not a youth-based player, but he really should still be a youth-based player. You know, ESR is going to come into the team for the back half of the season. Now, I think there was an expectation that Nelson was going to play quite a lot of football. You know, no big club would run into a year doing this, because even though they are skillful at under 23-year-old level, they lack the power and they lack the ability to do it for an entire season. It's like boxing, right? You need to box to be able to learn how to box for the full amount of rounds. There's no amount of training that you can do pre-fight for you to be able to understand what it is when you walk into a ring and what it is to stand there for the amount of rounds. You get gassed. And that's what you're seeing with young players. And that's why you saw Saka come in and have 3 really, really good games, 3 or 4 good games. I think on Arsebros, he was our man of the month for, maybe it was September, or very close to our man of the month for September. And then he dropped off. And that's a physical thing. That's him actually coming to grips with the premiership. Look at Joe Willock. I mean, in preseason at the end of last year, we were talking about Joe Willock being a power runner. You know, we were talking about him not in body shape, but in style of footballer, you know, and I hate this fucking constant Vieira comparison. It does my head in, but him being the Vieira that we required, or the Diaby that we required. And you look at where he is now as a player, right? He's completely cashed, stupid passes, losing the ball in the midfield, not making runs. So I don't know, mate. Big and the small of it is there were decisions made in the off season that shouldn't have been made.
Mm-hmm.
Some decisions we couldn't control, but then we needed to replace. I mean, and this is up, I put this up a couple of times on Twitter, and it gets a really, really 50-50 mix. But Petr Cech, Mkhitaryan, Aaron Ramsey, Monreal, Koscielny, all pulled out of the team in one season. Now, granted, they weren't, some were by retirement, some were through necessity, some were because Aaron Ramsey decided he was a £350,000 a year Galactico with no fucking hamstrings. But someone made the decision to say, we're going to let all of those games, all of that international experience, all of that Premier League experience leave in one way or the other, and we're not going to replace it like for like.
Yeah.
We're then going to back guys who have 3 games and a loan spell to Germany. We're going to back those guys. And this is the situation that we find ourselves in, mate. And you would hope that the next manager coming in isn't being given the directive to say, this is it. This is what you've got. You would hope that the board would be giving them some assurances saying, if you come in and you say, I need 3 senior players above the age of 27, so around that 27-year-old mark, I need a 27-year-old centre-back, I need a 27-year-old defensive midfielder, and I need a 27-year-old winger, you know, left winger to compensate somewhere, that you would go and get 3 guys, and that would be what the budget was based on. My fear is that the club have doubled down so heavily on Project Youth now that that's what the next manager is going to have to come in and work with. I mean, even look at like a Saliba. What the fuck is Saliba going to do next year? He's 19. Yeah. Like, this is the Premier League. This is the hardest running, most amount of transitions, most physical league in the world. I mean, we essentially play football like fucking cavemen. This isn't Italy. This isn't Spain. We're like, fucking run, double leg him. That's the Premiership. And you think a 19-year-old's going to come in and be our defensive leader. It's like it's madness.
I feel for the guy because at the moment he's injured and obviously he's coming to games with his agent, and they must have thought, what the hell have we walked into? What have we agreed to come to?
Who knew? I was listening to old podcasts the other day because I couldn't listen to any more fucking negative Arsenal podcasts. It's killing me. Right, we'll just do another one tonight. So listen in, subscribe, like, share. But I was listening to old podcasts, and there's a couple of podcasts from last year where we were praising Socrates. I mean, really praising him, talking about him being a defensive leader, about being the first no-nonsense defender that we'd bought in a long time. And he's been fucking terrible. Like, terrible. Like, fucking awful, Socrates. So you've then got this other issue. And again, I was saying this the other day. I've forgotten who I was saying it to. I might have put it up on Twitter. But do you think that people like Aubameyang came to Arsenal to be fed the ball by Joe Willock, Martinelli, and Matteo Guendouzi? Like, do you think those guys signed those contracts because that's what they believed Arsenal was going to be? And that's why Lacazette's being a little shit. You know, like, do you think that Saliba, when he signed his contract, thought that he would be coming into Arsenal next year and meant to be the savior of Arsenal? Or do you think that he believed that he would be coming in and learning from top players? Because he won't be learning from top players. No. Best case scenario, he's going to be learning from fucking David Luiz and Socrates. You know, I'll teach you how to defend. If I was asleep, I'd be going, get fucked. You don't know what you're doing, mate. I'll be over here doing my own training. It's a fucking mess.
Yeah, and it's going to get worse before it gets better. Let's be honest.
Unless there's some kind of change in mentality, unless the board are smart enough to look at this season and to say, okay, massive failure, didn't fucking work. We need to change this. We've got this great big packet of youth that we're not going to get rid of, that we're not going to send out on loan. Let's reinforce them with 3 signings, 3 £40 million signings. Let's reinforce them and hopefully move forward. That's the best case scenario for us, is that we have 2 windows where we go after genuine good players.
Sam's joined us now. How are you doing, Sam?
Good evening, everybody. How are we doing? Hello, Ryan, and I'm my friend. What is your name, mate?
Max, mate. Max.
Max. Yeah. Hi, Max. You okay? Yeah, I like guys called Max. You understand? Yeah, free movies and that. I like movies. What's going on, people?
Oh, right.
But yeah.
Well, to catch you up, Sam, we did touch on yesterday's match, and now we've slightly moved on to our managerial situation and the board level, and what the board have to do and what's gone wrong. Where do you, I was going to get your thoughts quickly, because us two have been pretty much down so far in the first 36 minutes. Trying and make us up a bit more positive. What do you think has gone wrong, or what do you think the club needs to do? And do you think Arteta's a man to come in and change the fortunes in the short term or long term?
Well, what I can say is we need to be demolished and need to be rebuilt. And if you think about it, do you think Simeone, Ancelotti, Rodgers, any of them want to come into a club that needs to be re-demolished and then rebuilt? They don't. They want something to build off to become successful. Simeone can do it anyway, but the thing is, he's not going to leave Atletico now, and he's someone that I would have as Arsenal boss, because I tell you something, this guy, if Arsenal were defending the way they were for Diego Simeone, bro, these men are getting a kick in the dressing room. You would see Socrates going from I'm a big man to I'm a big man. Then you got Kolasinac here going, yeah, man, you understand? I'm Hulk and that, I'm Brock Lesnar. I'm John Cena. You know, he would get that, you know, that beating, you understand? And yeah, you know, if we get Arteta's boss, you know, he must have been given some sort of, some sort of, what do you call it, like reassurance for January, like, oh, you know what, in January we'll give you the funds to go out and get this person. We'll help you, look for the person that you want, you choose, and we'll go out and get that person. We'll go get it done. I feel like in January they say there's no planning of signings, but with the Arteta move, there is going to be some signings. What I can say is, I'm not an ITK. I've never, acted like it, but I get told things. I get told a lot of different things. And one thing I was told was about Mauricio Pochettino was someone who Arsenal highly, highly, highly targeted. They also targeted Brendan Rodgers. They targeted a lot of different managers as well. But it turns out the managers that were at the club, as you know, would not leave now. They will not leave now because they've got things ongoing. What I was also told that there was Brendan Rodgers was looked at and they was gonna pay his clause to leave Leicester, but then he signed a new one and that one bumped up, his managerial clause bumped up so far high. Arsenal were like, no, we're not gonna do it. Rafa Benitez, highly regarded with his Premier League experience with Newcastle and all this and all that. 20 million to come to the league. He was chosen as an interim. Arsenal looked at him as an interim, but nah. But Arteta, obviously, he knows the club well. He doesn't do what Emery does, which is respect the opponent. He doesn't play like that. From what he was taught by Guardiola, or what he was taught by, from what what Pochettino said about him, what Wenger said about him, he is someone that's worth taking the risk on. I read things about Ancelotti. Don't get me wrong. I was pushing for Ancelotti. I wanted us to go out and get him because obviously he's experienced with the Champions League. He's done this. He's done a lot of things. He's won things. But I think that, if we did hire Ancelotti, 12 months later, we'll probably be in the same situation thinking, should we have taken the risk on Mikel Arteta? Now, the thing is, what Arteta will do, Arteta, if he's learned anything off Guardiola, he'd learn to bin the rubbish players. Show no mercy and bin some of the players that need to be binned. Because yep, like when Guardiola first came to City, he binned Joe Hart straight away. Of course, you're not good enough to be a Manchester City goalkeeper. Binned him. He's at West Ham. He can't do as good as he used to do. Simeone hurt himself by staying at Atletico for so long. Simeone came in half squad report in a full structure. They are weak and rude to play for Simeone. That's the thing though. You gotta understand, like you got to understand that no player is bigger than the club. No matter where you go, no player is bigger than the club. So at the end of the day, if Simeone wants what he wants to build from the back, and if he doesn't like you, then he's just going to get rid of you. At the same time, if you want to force a transfer request and go somewhere else and think that we're gonna miss you, then sorry, no, don't hit you on the way out. And
I just wonder whether Arteta's got that. Arteta obviously doesn't have the same amount of pull and have the same amount of weight behind him that a Pep Guardiola has. And I wonder whether even if Arteta wants to come in and wants to say, look, this player has to go, I want 5 people gone and 5 people in. At the end of the day, he's coming in, he's signing a contract as a head coach. I don't know that he's going to have that weight to be able to come in and throw it around. And this is what we were talking about before you came on, mate. We were talking about having a name that was big enough that they could manage in both directions. They could manage up and they could manage down. And managing up is going to the board and doing exactly what you just said and saying, this player is not good enough for Arsenal. This player is not good enough. This player is not good enough. They're all on the scrap heap. We got to bring in 3 more. Arteta's an assistant who's never managed at the top level. And I mean, can you see our board sitting there and saying, oh, yes, Mikel, we'll do that for you. Not a problem. We'll just bin 5 players and bring in 6 in the transfer window. It doesn't sound like us over the last couple of years. And that's my fear with Arteta. I don't fear about him from a coaching perspective. A good coach is a good coach, a coach who understands the technical, tactical side of the game and how to set us up. That's absolutely fine. I just question whether or not we really needed that Brendan Rodgers level, Rafa Benitez level, Carlo Ancelotti level, because they would come in and it would be no nonsense and they would know where they stand when they walk in with the football club.
The thing is, he was made club captain, and the one thing is, I'll be honest with you, he's probably one of the captains that would, that would give the players a bit of a kicking. So yeah.
Well, that's the thing. Be it Arteta or whoever comes in now, do they stick with Aubameyang as captain, or do they choose to actually grow a pair straight from the off and choose their own captain? And if so, who would that be?
I think if
you can't destabilise it again.
I'd stick with Aubameyang, but if I'm going to be honest here, if there's someone I would name captain, I would actually name Leno captain.
Good shout.
Yeah,
I would name.
Good shout. We just gave him our player. We just gave him our player of the month on the podcast. I just said that I thought he was the best transfer of the last 3 years for us. I think he's not going anywhere, mate. Good shout. He's not someone who came up in the conversation early on, but he's actually arguably been probably our most consistent performer of this year. I mean, we don't know what he's like behind the scenes, but I mean, how many goalkeepers have been captains over the years? Is it a almost impossibility for a goalkeeper to be a captain, considering he can't walk out of his goal and go and argue with the ref?
Well, Iker Casillas was captain of Real Madrid at one point, wasn't he?
Yeah, I think
so,
there, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think I've said it before. If it weren't for Leno, we would have lost 10-0 to City. If it weren't for Ben Leno,
We would have lost 10-0 if it weren't for Leno.
And the thing is, right, I said this before, the Europa League final, right? Had we played Leno ahead of Czech, I guarantee you we probably would have done better. I think, you know what, he is a good shot stopper, but does he organize the team enough? One thing I would do, right, if Arteta was good enough, if Arteta actually did this, I think this is where we would actually go ahead of people. He would actually say, if you wanted to organize a team, he'd go up to Leno, if Leno was captain, saying, okay, so this defense, what's wrong with it? What should I do? Who should I get rid of? What should I get in? This, that, and the other. Then Leno says, oh, I want another centre back, someone that, that's big, strong, whoever. Then they get pointed at Upamecano, they get Upamecano in, something like that, But the thing with midfield as a captain, we've had so many captains and midfielders. I think apart from Vieira, and at some extent Arteta and Fabregas, we have not had a proper captain since. And if you're going to be a captain as well, you've got like the manager needs to understand that you want to give them their full support no matter what, because you cannot throw players under the bus. You cannot do that at managerial level. It's unacceptable. And for me, Leno stands out simply because, again, in a shoddy defense, he's the one that outshines. He's the one that outshines. There's a reason why the Bayern Munich are interested in him to replace Neuer. There's a reason for that. Bayern Munich wouldn't be interested in Leno for no reason. And the thing is, with Leno, I think the German national team should pick him for Euro 2020, because without a doubt, this guy's an absolute talent. He's an absolute talent. I think for 19 million, he was an absolute steal. He was an absolute steal.
I think we have to worry about getting too micro with the team at the moment, looking at small things like who's the captain and who's this and who's that, even to an extent looking at the centre-backs. You know, I was saying before, Socrates wasn't this bad last season. Like, Socrates was nowhere near this bad last season. He was borderline a defensive leader for us. And I've said it over and over again. You know, we look at big targets at Arsenal because they're the easy things to aim at. Yeah. And the difficult thing is to look at it and say, look, the defenders are backing off because they're not great defenders. That's a big target. The smaller target to look at is to say that the defensive spacing's not right, the coaching hasn't been right, the structure of the midfield isn't right. There's no three-man midfield that you can put together at Arsenal right now that makes sense, that doesn't have an issue. You play Xhaka, you gain things, you lose massive things. You play Torreira and Guendouzi, Torreira and Guendouzi together have never been good. There's a lack of power running in there. There's a lack of actual defensive sustainability in there and balance in there. Yeah, there's so many things wrong. And you know, the big targets to sit there and say, okay, well, we need to bring in this guy and we need to bring in that guy. And I guess if we're hoping for anything with Mikel Arteta, knowing that the board and knowing that the ownership structure is the way it is, at its bare minimum, the guy who we bring in has to be able to make the best out of what he's got right now, which we've seen Freddie maybe hasn't been able to do. And we know the reason why. He doesn't have the right amount of backroom staff. He doesn't have the time because it's December and we're playing every 2 days. And he's come out and he said both these things. You know, it'd be great to have more time. It'd be great to have more support. At its bare minimum, I think at the larger level, instead of looking at things at captaincy and instead of looking at things like new players, at its bare minimum, we have to be able to look to Mikel Arteta and say, have we employed, and granted he hasn't signed yet, so this could all be for the tip, but have we or are we about to employ someone who is tactically strong enough and technically good enough to come in and put together a midfield, to put together structures around a midfield, a defense, a pressing strategy, any form of pressing strategy. Like, go back and watch parts of the City game. There's no pressing strategy to what we did. You had one press, one staying, one going, one sitting, all four going and getting bypassed. Like, that reeks of a team who not only are now trying to do something that isn't Emery, but have no understanding of what Freddie is trying to do, or Freddie hasn't been able to imprint what he's intended to. And that's not surprising. It's not surprising to think that Freddie hasn't been able to do anything. Because how are you meant to connect to a manager who you know is an interim while you're just waiting for the next guy to come through the door? But on a larger level, I guess, you know, he's got to be a good coach. At its core, he's got to be a good coach, because if the board says no to stuff, and if the board says no to signings, and if we have to tear the whole thing up, mate, we're going to be in trouble if we've got a guy who's going to rely on transfers. You would hope that we've got a guy who can make the best out of what we've got and borderline make us back to being a competitive top 6 team. That's got to be our starting point, back to being a competitive top 6 team. And then we can start moving towards top 4. And hopefully in 5 years, we can start moving towards getting up to where Liverpool have been able to get up to.
Sam, you got anything to add to that?
Well, yeah, you know, this club, again, you know, they need to do things properly. I think for years, they've not been, their recruitment has been absolutely poor. You know, we've recruited players who are disgraceful, in my opinion. You know, we should not have recruited in the first place. I'll be honest with you, like in 2016, you know that Wenger wanted N'Golo Kante, but Ivan Gazidis opted for Granit Xhaka instead. Said Xhaka was a lot better of a midfield player than Kante, and I was like, Kante just won the league. Why did we pick Xhaka over Kante? That's got one of the stupidest things I've ever seen. It's honestly the stupidest thing I've ever heard and I've ever seen. Again, these board errors. The one thing I will say is this, right? You can debate me on this and say whatever you want, swear at me and call me every swear word in the book that you can think of. But I think had Wenger left in 2014, we wouldn't be in this mess right now. I'll be honest with you, because then...
Yeah, agreed.
Because then we would not have appointed Unai Emery. Because then it wouldn't have been that we sat Unai after 18 months. It wouldn't have been the case.
Well, Klopp was available to us in 2014. So, and apparently very much wanted to come to the club. So I don't think that's even a statement. That's even a statement worth necessarily heavily debating.
It's true. Like, you believe it or not, Klopp wanted the Arsenal job, but because Arsenal weren't going to budge and not going to get Wenger go anytime soon, you opted to go to Liverpool instead. And also Guardiola approached the Arsenal board in 2016, and it turns out that the board said, "Now we want to stick with Wenger for another season," and then they rejected him. So, at the end of the day,
we've all seen what's happened with them two since they've gone and dominated the league.
Yep.
This is what Max is saying. Whoever comes to be, say City, yeah, you can have Arteta. Okay, do the club now, then tear up the rule book. Everything they've put in place, they need to tear it up and start again. New head coach, new regime, new everything. Or do you think they should stick with the youth policy as they seem to be going with at the moment?
Honestly, the way that we are at the minute, we're gonna keep going down and down and down and down and down and down and down. And I think in the next few, and then when Arteta is appointed, we're gonna have to, when Arteta is appointed, we're gonna have to, go forward. From what I've heard as well, Arteta is gonna come in. Arteta looks like he wants to bring in a few people to the club, and one of the people that he wants to, he has a good connection with is Xabi Alonso. So I wouldn't be surprised of Xabi Alonso. We heard about Torrent, potentially Pepe Reina as well. He does have good contacts, so I wouldn't be surprised if any of them come to the club as well. Or if Santi Cazorla decides to hang up his boots and come to the club and manage instead, I think.
He's looking to bring them in obviously as coach. I was thinking, fuck, are these guys still playing? Are we going to install like Zimmer frames and fucking handrails in the toilets? I got lost there for a second. I was like, fucking hell, it's going to be like Dad's Army. Permission to panic. We're fucking permission to panic because we're fucked anyway.
The complete opposite to you. Go from one extreme to the other, yeah. Thing is,
I mean, yeah, big personalities into the club from a coaching perspective are going to be essential to Arsenal. Yeah. I mean, big personalities, and I like the idea of people like Pepe Reina. I mean, at least he's played in the Premiership. I don't know what his coaching credentials are, but I mean, anything moving forward has to be better than nothing. Like I said, you would hope that for Mikel Arteta, he's going to be smart enough to push for certain assurances. So as far as January goes, I'm not a fan of making signings in January. I think that you tend to make panic buys, overpay, or get people who are troublemakers out of clubs that clubs are desperate to get rid of. So occasionally I think you can get something good. Like I think I fucking hate Granit Xhaka. I think he's a cunt. But a club outside may get a really, really good player in January who's not suited to the Premiership, but a Xhaka in Italy may actually go and play quite well. So there are exceptions to the rule. And yes, we did get Aubameyang in January. I understand that one as well.
Very rarely that happens, though.
Very, very, very rare that happens. So I think that this is going to be the group that we have until the end of the season. What you would be hoping is that there would be some assurances from Arteta coming into the summer that he's going to have a certain amount of funds allowed to him. And the other side of that is you would hope that he would be wanting assurances that he can go and get some of the players that he wants. Because I've made this statement before. I absolutely guarantee you Pepe was not the player that Emery wanted. I guarantee you that Ceballos was not the player that Emery wanted. And to an extent, I guarantee you that Torreira was not the player that Emery wanted, because we know he wanted Nzonzi, Banega, and Zaha. And I tell you what, if you put those three big fuckers in the team right now, it looks a whole lot different. There's a whole lot more power. I've said this before, once you go and start removing Ramsey, Iwobi, and Mkhitaryan out of a team all at once, who are three, granted Mkhitaryan was a bit of a shit ass, but I think Iwobi and Mkhitaryan last year created the most amount of chances for Arsenal per minute per game when they were on the pitch. And because they were ball progressors and they moved us forward, and we've gone from that to, very slight, low power players. And the Premiership now, I genuinely believe it's becoming about athletes. It's becoming about running. It's becoming less about football. And that old Arsene Wenger model of bringing in Plebs and Rosicki's and Arshavins and all these kind of diminutive tens. I don't believe it's about that anymore. I believe it's about bringing in like Nzonzis and Decores and guys like that to stack your midfield and make sure you run. Look at Liverpool. Gigi Van Aldum is not a fantastic player, but that motherfucker runs all day. Big power play, big running. Look what Liverpool did with Oxlade-Chamberlain. They did the thing that we weren't smart enough to recognize, that you had a player with a huge amount of talent and a huge amount of player. So you would hope that Arteta has a certain amount of assurances, at least around the types of players, and that he's going to be able to be involved in it, where, like I said, Emery was not backed.
Well, just touching on transfer as well. Have we got an update on Kolasinac? Is he a long-term injury? Or is it like a little niggle? Because maybe if it's a long-term thing, we've got no left back now. Could we be forced to bring in someone short-term in January? And could that?
That's likely. I think as far as a January signing, I think it's more likely that we would be bringing in someone who is a little bit older, who's maybe being a backup at a club or a backup to a backup at a club just to get us through a couple of months. I mean, Kolasinac had a groin against Liège. There's a reason why he didn't have his strip on the sideline. He wasn't meant to be playing. He then got pulled into the squad when Bellerin did his hamstring. And then once Tierney went off, he played with a groin, and he didn't look right before he rolled his ankle against City. So I'd be very surprised if Kolasinac wasn't going to be a 5 or 6 week prospect. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Mustafi to left back.
Oh God, no. Oh no. The thing is, it's either going to be him or if this ain't sorted by the weekend, Freddie will put Saka there and change the formation around.
I think Chambers is actually the one who will end up out there long term. I think you'll end up going back to a Luis Socrates centre partnership. And if I had to just back someone to go out there and do a job, I'd back our version of, the less good James Milner in a Callum Chambers, and I'd say go fill a hole, son. Go do your job. At least he'll put in the effort. He's one of the few players this season who's put the effort in.
Well, he's because obviously what happened last season. I mean, I think he came in this season for a point to prove not only to the club but to Emery at the time. So he's had that motivation, whereas the other side, they just seem there's no motivation about it. There's no. It's just like we've got a paycheck. We're off now, bye. And it's just, again, as you said, things have got to change from the top first, and it seeps through to the bottom. So much has got to change. Oh dear, it'll be a long.
I mean, we're going to have a spare 70 million in summer anyway.
Yeah.
Well, not spare, because Aubameyang's going to Real, but we're going to get 70 million for him, and there's no way around it. There is at this point 0% possibility that he's not going. So we'll get the money for him. The money needs to be redistributed, and the team needs to be built in a less attacking bias. And I think for too long we've spent 50 odd million on Lacazette, 60 odd million on Aubameyang, then 70 odd million on Pepe. And I think at least one of those signings, one of those 50 or 60 odd million pound signings needs to be redistributed into a different area. Needs to be redistributed in a different bias on the pitch. It's as simple as that. And how many fucking years have we been saying it for? You know, how long have we been saying we need this big ballsy defensive midfielder? We need this big dominating centre back. And it's like, guys, the time is now.
We say this, we're going to get an attacker though. It's like the philosophy. It's like that old philosophy of Wenger in the early years. Is that in like that mid-noughties after he moved to the Emirates, where it was like, you might score more, but we'll score more than you. Sort of attitude. You might score, but we'll score more than you. And it was like, no. That didn't work then. It ain't going to work now. Get the balance right. Start again. We know where the weaknesses are. Sort your centre backs out. Sort your central midfield pairings out. Get everything in. Get your spine. It's a spine of any club. The spine is what makes or breaks you. Get a spine. I don't care if it's Decore or whoever. You go. Things will be linked to Decore, and you have certain fans in our fan base have a kick-off because he plays for Watford. So what? He does a job. He hasn't injured. He is what he is. Sam, you think tried?
Go get me a Lewis Dunk, a Decore, and a Fraser, or someone like that, and you go watch those motherfuckers run.
Do you remember how many times I got destroyed for mentioning Lewis Dunk, saying Dunk would be a sick defender at Arsenal? Do you know how many times I got fucking destroyed saying that shit? I got destroyed so many times. Apologies, I got destroyed so many times saying, "Oh, you got a fantasy about Lewis Dunk." He came to the Emirates and he gave everyone a showing. I'm just thinking, you're having a laugh at me, and then you're praising Lewis Dunk, saying, "Oh, Dunk is a big defender. He's a top man." Well, a few days ago, you're not laughing at me because I suggested he should be centre back for Arsenal.
Sam, this is our fan base.
Because David Luiz is a better defender.
Exactly.
Because David Luiz was a good signing from Arsenal. Defensive leader. What a guy.
Yeah.
Fucking hell.
See how many times I mentioned Lewis Dunk? Ryan, you'd know how many times I kept mentioning Lewis Dunk.
All last season as well. You're saying it all last season.
Yeah. I was like, yo, like when I saw the semi-final against City, I was thinking, yo, Arsenal need this guy, fam. Like, this guy.
We just need people who see Arsenal as an opportunity, not people who see Arsenal as a stepping block. Like, it's as simple as that. Arsenal's become a club that you come to where you pick up a paycheck and you have a nice time for a couple of years, and then you decide that you want to move on. You know, you go get a player like Lewis Dunk and you go and hand him the opportunity to play at a top club, and this guy defends. That's what he does. He's a defender. You know, the last time we had defenders who defended, and that's what they did. Tony Adams, Martin Keown, and we did pretty fucking well with those blokes. Don't forget, Lee Dixon came from where did Dixon come from again? Stoke.
Yeah.
You know, so this idea that we had taken on this attitude of being a Galactico club, right? Yeah. That it is only acceptable for us as a fan base to go and get players from top clubs. It's only acceptable for us to go and get Ceballos from Real. Fuck that mentality. Fuck that mentality. Go and get me some Premiership ready. And that's why I fought for Zaha. That's why I said Zaha all the way in the offseason. And everyone was like, oh, he does this, he does that. I said, I don't care. He's Premiership ready. He's been hardened at Crystal Palace. He's already made a step up to Man U and failed and come back down. He knows what it tastes like. And I tell you what, Chelsea will buy him in January and he will go and convert them into a serious, serious team. When we were turning down Ryan Fraser, because everyone was like, oh, Ryan Fraser, no one fucking wants Ryan Fraser. Guess who wants Ryan Fraser now? Liverpool, you fucking nonsense.
It's because Arsenal were thrown off by his 40 million price tag. And yeah,
his 40 million price tag and the fact of where he's coming from, you know, we're fucked.
It's because, like, also as well, the Bournemouth demanded a high fee because basically they have to pay Aberdeen some money, like for Fraser, because there's sell-on clauses, isn't it? And with Zaha as well, it was a sell-on clause that they have to pay to Manchester United. Like, you know, so then obviously I was like, if Arsenal did 55 million plus Chambers, that and at the time when Jenkinson was at the club, then we probably could have landed Zaha, but unfortunately that wasn't the case. You know, I wanted Zaha at Arsenal, I really did.
Well, just going back to what Max said about lots of where Lee Dixon came from. George Graham brought Dixon Bowl from Stoke, Nigel Winterburn from I think it's Wimbledon, David Seaman
Wimbledon.
David Seaman from QPR. The only person in the back line that he didn't buy was only Adams. He was already there because he was ready made. He was already there. And then what was it? There's others as well. It says but he brought within the lower club, but he brought within the league itself, and it gave them, because they come into a club like Arsenal, and then it was that pride of, wow, this club wants me. I'm going to give my all. We don't have, and this is what we got. This is what the Arsenal need to get the head out their asses now. It's like you said, this snobbery of the Galactico sort of attitude. We're not a Real Madrid. We're nowhere near that level. If we have to go to Bournemouth, Brighton to sign their players and strengthen our squad, our club, so be it. For the better that than going all the way abroad, but signing someone we've never even heard of, and putting all our hopes on them. And it doesn't work. We then sort that person. They go off and they have to rebuild their career again.
But we're happy to go buy garbage from France.
Yeah,
we're happy to go buy Shamak and fucking Sano goals, and all these guys from these shit fucking teams. But when it comes to the Premiership, we balk at price, which is the first thing, because there is a Premier League excise. There's additional money for Premier League players. But I just feel like if you have the choice between two players, you have the choice between someone who's had 50 games in the Premiership and understands the Premiership and has been relatively successful within the Premiership, or you have the choice of going and getting someone from Ligue 1. Like, surely the Premier League player, if it's we're not talking about double the amount of money. We're talking about a 10%, 15% increase for Premiership ready players. Surely this has to be the mentality now. Surely if you were going to take an approach to how do I fix Arsenal quickly? If I was making a strategic approach right now as the board and I was saying, how do I fix Arsenal quickly? I would be saying, I need to go and get 3 players who are set and ready to go in the Premiership, who are going to need no gestation time, who are going to be able to walk in, slot in, get dropped in. Someone like Lewis Dunk. Do you think Lewis Dunk would take a huge amount of time in Arsenal to be able to come to the fore? No, because he's a defender. He's going to walk in, understand the structure, and go for it. Again, I'm just throwing out names, but again, someone like Decore, who we've been talking about for a long time. Do you really think that Decore is going to do a less effective job than Guendouzi, with that quantity of power and that quantity of running? No. And he's Premiership ready and he understands. So bring him in and drop him in. That's my strategy to how to fix it. I think right now we're doubled down with Project Youth. I don't think we can change that. The playbook's not going to get torn in half. This is Arsenal Football Club. This isn't Chelsea, right? We don't have Abramovich. We're not going to come in, sack everyone, throw £400 million at it, and start again. So that mentality needs to shift. What we do have is we have a crop of young kids who look to be very, very good prospects as long as we don't burn them out. And we are risking burning them out this season. The simplest strategy is to say, how do I make sure that I provide structure for these young kids to be able to grow over the next season and a half? The way I do that is I bring in 3 either Premiership ready players, which is my preference, or I bring in 3 players who are proven, who are able to come in and slot into key positions and instantly become part of the senior leadership group. It's not rocket surgery, boys. It's pretty fucking basic.
It's basic to us, but apparently difficult for our owners and our board members, apparently, as we've touched on earlier, with their stupidity this morning, so we say. Sam, what was your initial reaction to Vinay being caught outside Arteta's home this morning? And do you think of it as I do, that it was so stupid not to have an interview back in London where he was earlier on in the day, be it a hotel or something? Didn't come out of a hotel? As long as he stays put for a good few hours afterwards, and no starts leaking information, you're not going to know who they've been in an interview with. We don't have this meltdown from our fan base. But where Arsenal? We'll let you go back. No, Michael. We'll let you go back to Manchester. We'll follow behind you. Have a little chat, and then be in the papers the next morning. And for the media to be outside Arteta's house, someone would have leaked it, be it our club or someone on his side of it. Sam, sorry, go on.
Well, This is the club where they're going to surprise you one way or another. Nobody expected us to sign Nicolas Pepe, right? Nobody expected us to sign him. And what happens? Boom! Arsenal reach an agreement with you. You know, this club, as I said, someone in the club leaked it because at the same time they hardly leak. The thing is, this is the way that things are done, and this is the way that you should, I think, lead life. Is that you don't reveal anything, you reveal less. And when it's all confirmed, when it's all agreed, when it's all official, like when you know it's official, that's when you want to reveal things properly. And Hus Fahmy, right, is someone that works on the contracts. He would not have been there if we weren't going to get him as a manager. So I think that Arteta, as we all know, it's 100% Arsenal boss, barring any 11th hour incomings, which I doubt will be anything because I doubt tonight Diego Simeone is going to leave Atletico Madrid. I doubt Allegri said he wants to step back into management in the summer. So yeah, I doubt any of those big names want to come now. I doubt the rebuild job that we have. I doubt any of them want to get into that. So yeah, I just feel like now's our time. Now is Arteta's moment.
Also, just saying Arteta, you're saying it's pretty much a done deal. But the thing is, we didn't get their permission. We've tried to negotiate our contract guy there, and we hadn't even spoke to Man City to get the permission to talk to him. Now we are waiting on Man City to say yay or nay on the deal to go ahead of it. And as Matt said earlier, if they say no, we're completely exposed because we've made a big thing of it now that this was our first choice guy.
Well, what I'm getting from all of this is, again, like I said, I am not a ITK or any of that stuff. I don't think to be in it. But it's got to be done. And I feel like now they're just pulling it up because, like I said, you cannot speak to managers at another club without the club's permission. You cannot do that. I mean, look at when Lopetegui was appointed as Real Madrid boss. When he was about to manage Spain in the World Cup, what happened? Spain got rid of him, going that you've gone behind their back and you've done this. At the same time, we've not gone behind their back. Like, and then they would have got rid of Arteta and I doubt Guardiola. I doubt Guardiola would have said no. And the thing is, Arteta would have asked Guardiola, "Can I speak to the club?" They must have done it on the low. But if Arteta does reject Arsenal now, then I don't think any manager would want to come and manage us.
Right, I'm gonna.
That's my
coming on 10 o'clock now. What time's it over in your side of the world?
9 a.m, mate. I had to fucking go to work at some point.
Oh my days! Well, I better wrap up then. Cheers, Max, for coming on. I know it's early. It's cool. Obviously now I know it's early for you, so I'll let you get your coffee or whatever and get off to work and do what you've got to do for the rest of your day. Sam, thanks for coming on as well.
no worries.
And yeah, again, Max, I appreciate you coming on. Hope I can get back on again soon, some point.
All good, mate. All good.
Yeah, and where can
mate. So the Arsebros Rantcast at Arsebros Rant. 4 of us, mate. We're a pack of fucking degenerates. We believe in the 3 Ds: discussion, debate, and dick jokes. We at the moment we do a monthly, which is basically where we break down all of Arsenal for the entire month. We're very, very player focused as well as far as what we look at. We also do another show which we do fortnightly, which is Manny Riz who hosts it, and I'm on it occasionally, and he does one called The Hot Topic, where we take a single topic and we really rip it to shreds. Rip it to shreds, mate. So at Arsebros Rant, at Arsebros Rant on Twitter and Facebook, and you can find us on Spotify, SoundCloud, and all other places where they let 4 fucking degenerates swear into a microphone for an hour.
And Sam as well, where can people find you as well?
My Twitter handle, official Samo. That's pretty much it, to be honest. I'm not really on any other social media as much. For me, I'm always just busy doing my thing, so I don't really have time for for anything really. And it's every blue moon I can come on a podcast, I can come and talk. I'm not really. You might think I'm socially awkward, but unfortunately, that's the way that I am, and I can't help it.
No, we love you for it, Sam. We needed you tonight because until you came on, we were very downbeat. We were very like put all the negatives. You came on and lifted the show with your.
Wow. Well, yeah. By the way, I'm off on Wednesday. I'm going to the Bayer Leverkusen Hertha Berlin game. Flying out to Leverkusen Wednesday morning, and I'll be back. I'll come back the next day. But yeah, after the Bayer Leverkusen Hertha Berlin game, great to watch some German football. German football tickets are available all the time, and you can get good seats for prices that how much a vegetarian pasties at the Emirates Stadium and a bag of crisps and a Coke. You know, that's how much it is in the Bundesliga. You know,
and you get to not watch Arsenal.
and you get to watch a group of disappointing players. It's all good, if you go to the Emirates Stadium and you want to buy food from the stands, it's the same price as paying a football German ticket, man. A large Coke, a large pizza, and a pack of Maltesers. Throw that in the mix, a vegetarian pasty. Why not? All them together, the same price as paying a German football ticket. I don't know what I want more.
Fair enough. There you go, guys. You've got a recommendation. If things get too bad, you want to go to Arsenal, just go to Germany. For the price of what it costs you to go to Coke.
German football, it's fantastic. Honestly, it's fantastic. Like I've heard people tell me, like the stadium is, fascinating. The fans as well, they're very passionate. They more care about the game. If prices go up, they protest. They're not fans of high prices, and they will voice their opinion. What it is as well. There's a lot of respect amongst the fans. We don't have that at Arsenal, which is a sad thing.
I did touch on that earlier on at the beginning of the show that our media just treat us like just dirt on the bottom of their shoe, basically, over in the UK. We are scum. We should not talk. We should be positive all the time, not negative. Even if they're negative, we cannot correspond with that. We have to be positive. Even if we get relegated, we've got to be positive about it because we are fans. We have to support them no matter what. They're supporting. We get behind them no matter what. But we have to be brutally honest. We cut around the bollocks and be honest. And that's what it is. And because we're doing it, because there's more of us doing it these days, they don't like that because it's better like to talk sport that losing their numbers when it comes to Arsenal fans especially because they're not instead of calling in, they're doing things like this or going on fan cams. But hey, what do I know? What do we all know? We don't have a degree apparently. According to TalkSport, we're not allowed to discuss all this and be how we are. But it is what it is. Thank you to Tony in the chat as well, keeping up the chat and all his comments throughout the show. Hope if you haven't already, do come across this any new and you like what you've seen going forward. Do subscribe, like, and share. Get this channel growing a bit quicker. All support is appreciated, and we'll be back again on Thursday for the preview of Everton, which will be fun. Because then they're looking hiring and how things are at Arsenal at the moment, that'll be fun. And then we're obviously doing the reviews about 8 o'clock on Saturday. But until then, enjoy the rest of your week. I might do another if Arteta's announced or who the head coach will be is announced before, and I'll do a live stream reacting to giving my thoughts properly in general at the time. Until then, enjoy the rest of your week, guys, and as always, up the Arsenal.